Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is City Talk. Last week, Linda Gibbs, Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services, Lillian Barrios Paoli, and Professor Lawrence Hebert, who served on the Commission for Economic Opportunity, discussed the goals of the Commission, its workings, and deliberations. We surveyed the Commission's numerous recommendations. This week, how to make it happen. Back for a return engagement, Deputy Mayor Linda Gibbs, who oversees 11 city agencies, including the Human Resources Administration, the Administration for Children's Services, and the Health and Hospitals Corporation. Prior to her appointment as Deputy Mayor, Linda was Commissioner of the Department of Homeless Services. She has served as Deputy Commissioner at the Administration for Children's Services, and she has also served in the City Council's Finance Division and the Mayor's Office of Management and Budget. We also have Veronica White, who is the newly named Executive Director for the Center for Economic Opportunity, to coordinate and oversee the solutions proposed by the Commission on behalf of the Mayor and Deputy Mayor Gibbs. She's worked as a consultant specializing in strategic business planning and management, and has held executive positions that include President and CEO of the New York City Housing Partnership and Chief Operating Officer of the New York City Partnership. Veronica is an attorney and worked for the City Department of Housing Preservation and Development. And Jonathan Mintz. Jonathan is the Commissioner of the Department of Consumer Affairs since March 2006. Previously, Jonathan served as acting commissioner, and before that, deputy and assistant commissioner. He has taught in the Little Red Schoolhouse, and he has practiced law and was a founding member of a law faculty. Welcome, all of you.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
As I was preparing for today's show, the New York Times reports new office would battle city poverty. And in fact, yesterday, the mayor, three of you were there, announced a major step forward in this New York City fight on poverty. As we discussed in the earlier show, you had 6 months to come up with recommendations and then 60 days to come up with action plans, and you've done it. Let's talk to me about this Center for Economic Opportunity. Veronica, you're going to run it. What is it supposed to be doing?
Well, we had 60 days to work with all the agencies, particularly commissioners like Jonathan, and we all got together with the deputy mayors, all of them, not just Linda. Many of these agencies are reporting to other deputy mayors. And we all talked about what was in the report and then tried to come up with an implementation plan around the three groups that we were supposed to come up with strategies to address. And it was a great process, and it's been terrific, and we were happy to roll out the first one yesterday. And Jonathan will speak a bit about that. And we're still working at it, though. Over this next few months, we'll be rolling out more initiatives. And as each of these are rolled out, we're setting up an evaluation and measurement tools around each of them with the agencies, with the Office of Management and Budget, and with the Deputy Mayor's Office, so that we can evaluate them on an ongoing basis and figure out exactly which ones we should continue to move forward with, which ones we should fund at a higher level, and which ones perhaps don't work and we should try something new.
What is interesting is the cross-agency, cross-deputy mayor collaboration. This is virtually unheard of, that you would have the opportunity to work with agencies that are outside of your portfolio and across deputy mayors. Talk about that operation, that work.
Well, I think because of the way the mayor asked us to look at this issue, it really brought us well beyond the traditional social service agencies that are typically serving people in need. He asked us to focus on solutions to poverty. What are those things that are going to help to bring people from below the poverty line to above poverty through economic opportunity, employment, so that they can collect incomes to support their families independently. What that meant is that we had to cross lines and talk to the economic development folks and talk to the housing folks and really think about how we could align our strategies around shared outcomes, that everybody in one form or the other, in service to city government with our nonprofit partners, are focusing on how to better the lives of New Yorkers, and typically include in those agendas thinking about how to serve those who are most in need. And it just created a thread that brought all of these various agencies together in new ways, and often in conversations that hadn't occurred before, despite the fact that the agencies were already focused on those populations.
And in fact, some folks haven't met other folks on other than a very formal level prior to being engaged in this process.
And I think one of the great things about this is that we are going to get a lot of new impact from the investments that the mayor's committed, but we're also going to leverage the base of activities in the agencies by just getting more power out of the combined efforts.
Let's talk about this. Let's go back to the center. Talk about the amount of money, what you intend to do with it, and then we'll turn to Jonathan with his Office of Financial Empowerment.
There's a total of $150 million, which is an annual amount of money that we're going to be devoting to the poverty effort here in New York City. The mayor committed this amount of money. Part of it's going to be raised from the private sector, for a good $25 million of it, particularly for conditional cash transfers, which is an initiative he's discussed a bit. And the big part of it that's very new as of yesterday's announcement is the $100 million Innovation Fund. And this is going to, the reason it's an innovation fund is because basically instead of just baselining these initiatives in various agency budgets, we're going to be holding this in a CEO budget line. And basically each of the commissioners and agencies are going to carry forward with their money, and then together with the agency, the Deputy Mayor's Office, and the Office of Management and Budget will be reviewing each of these and deciding which ones to carry forward into the next year. And that's why we're calling it an innovation fund, and we're working across the very many agencies and with all the deputy mayors.
And have you begun developing the various the metrics that you would need to first to operationalize and then measure success?
We're just beginning to do that now with the first program that we rolled out yesterday. And as each of them come out, that's what we're going to be doing, is working with across the agencies and working with each of the agencies to come up with the proper evaluation and measurement mechanisms.
Jonathan, Office of Financial Empowerment, what does it do?
Well, essentially,
Or what will it do?
Well, right. Essentially, the office is going to be dedicated to what I say is making every dollar count for New Yorkers with low incomes, trying to help people make smart decisions, and as the Deputy Mayor said, sort of move up the economic ladder. How do you get the resources, the information that you need? How do you avoid the right pitfalls to move forward for yourself and your family?
Go ahead.
There's just a very high cost of being poor. Reports after reports will show you whether it's the purchase of food in low-income neighborhoods, whether it's the securing financial services. There is a premium paid by the poor for the very same services that better-off individuals can get more cheaply in their neighborhoods. It's an incredibly obtuse reality, and part of the Office of Financial Empowerment's mission is to try to bring the greater variety of low-cost, affordable financial tools into poor neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. And talk about that.
I was going to say, and at the same time, you have available programs that are somewhat difficult to get. And like we've been able to do with the Earned Income Tax Credit campaign, you want to take other available resources and opportunities and make it as easy as possible for the people who need them to get them.
Talk about the Earned Income Tax Credit, and then talk about these other opportunities.
Well, the Earned Income Tax Credit is one example, EITC. It's one example of a federal, and in this case also state and city benefit that people with lower incomes can qualify for. And the city's worked hard to kind of build the coalition that allows people to know that it exists, to understand that it's theirs to go get, and then in this case to make it as easy to get it through volunteer tax assistance centers and using the good offices of 311. What the Office of Financial Empowerment will do is identify other great benefits like that and other needs, as Linda mentioned, and build the kinds of coalitions that make it as easy as possible for people to actually put their hands on those resources.
One of the things that I noticed preparing for this interview was that the financial cost for financial services for the poor is astoundingly high. And looking at the EITC, they go to commercial preparers, and these commercial preparers charge rather exorbitant rates, and then there are these revenue anticipation loans where you get a loan based on your anticipated return, but the rates are really, this is maybe not the right legal term, usurious. How do you monitor and how do you change that behavior, or how do you give these folks a different option?
Well, this is what I think makes so much sense about marrying the mission of the Office of Financial Empowerment with Consumer Affairs. Consumer Affairs in the past has made sure that those preparers that are offering refund anticipation loans aren't misleading people into thinking that they're sort of quick and cheap returns. And so litigation can always be part of the mix. But as well, it's about education, it's about information, it's about knowing that you can get a refund very quickly without all of those additional costs. And then, if we're good, leveraging those refunds and having people use them to begin or to move further down the path of creating savings plans as they head toward paying for education for their children, buying a house, et cetera.
You've got a lot to do. How do you, as a commissioner, or how do commissioners, we're talking about many commissioners, prioritize what this activity, because you've got a mission and now this mission has been expanded. How do you do it with the resources, human and otherwise, that you've got?
Well, I think that you say it correctly. It's the expansion of the mission, and that expansion, as Linda mentioned, is actually it has a very dynamic impact upon the agency. When you ask an agency that isn't a traditional social service agency and yet already has such connections to these populations, we regulate debt collection agencies, pawn shops, employment agencies. So you have those relationships. You've looked at them in different ways. When you now ask yourself to expand, in Consumer Affairs case, to expand that mission and think about how to go to the next step and not just make the marketplace fair, but how to make the marketplace more accessible for people, you find internal sparks that just make it automatically rise to the top. I mean, it's very exciting for us.
What's coming up? What can we expect coming out of Consumer Affairs in the next couple of months that relates to these activities?
Well, I'm looking forward to hiring a staff to do this.
This is important.
It's very important, exactly. You know, we're taking a look at actually a lot of different things. One of the things that we talked about in the conference with the mayor is that part of what this office is going to do is try to import best practices from really around the world and to figure out what are the programs that really can make the most sense, or ought to be tried at least in New York to see if they make the most sense. We talked a little bit about other programs like individual development accounts. There are seed accounts.
Talk to me about these individual development accounts a bit.
Well, they interest me a lot. They are federal dollars that are leveraged through local banking institutions and not-for-profits. And what they essentially do is they encourage people to save by matching their savings if they succeed in doing so. Mm-hmm. It's a great idea. The money is out there. There could always be more, but the money's out there. And I think the real challenge is to figure out, one, can we bring it to scale in New York? And then two, actually making that happen. And it's one of the things we'll be taking a look at.
Veronica, what do you see as the director of this operation as the major obstacles, if you will, and the major sources of optimism for you sitting in this chair right now?
You could sense the optimism yesterday. I mean, even the announcement being at the Lower East Side People's Federal Credit Union with the mayor. The folks that were on the staff there, the people walking in and
astounding.
out. Poor people that every day are walking in, just introducing that concept to people's lives that, no, when you get your check, you don't have to give a part of your paycheck to someone else. You can open an account at a credit union, like the one that we were at yesterday. That doesn't seem such a novel idea, but it is to a lot of people, that they think a fact of life is you walk in and you pay a part of your check away that never, ever, your family never sees. Mm-hmm. So those kinds of connections that we're making between and among the community development financial institutions, such as the credit unions, the excitement that is building amongst folks in the nonprofit sector and people that we've been working with, both with Jonathan and all the various other agencies in terms of foundations, in terms of nonprofits, community-based people that have been working around a lot of these initiatives and are very excited to see the cross-cutting across agencies, whether it's be CUNY working with the Department of Corrections or SBS working with other agencies. So we're crossing many lines with these various agencies and with the commissioners. And I think there's an excitement both amongst the city staff that are working on the projects and with a lot of the folks in the outside world that see these interconnections. They've tried sometimes to draw the lines among city agencies, and now we're helping them do that. And that's a lot of what my office is about, is to help all the agencies get their programs off the ground. They have a wealth of information and great people working in each of these agencies, and to the extent that especially that it crosses different agency lines, helping them have that happen, get the money for it, and move each of these initiatives ahead.
You were not part of the commission or its staff, and you are coming in as an outsider. When you first read this report, what was your immediate reaction, both positive and if there was any negative?
Well, as a New Yorker and a fan of Mayor Bloomberg, and also I worked for Dick Parsons in the past when he was the chair of the nonprofit that I was running. It's a great sense of excitement. I'd known Linda for years, and seeing when the commission, first the group was put together, and I just was following it carefully, even though I wasn't directly involved in it. So I was very excited in September when the commission released its report, and I thought that the logic behind a lot of the thoughts, for example, targeting the 3 groups, made a lot of sense in terms of thinking about children before they hit school age, because it's so important that when you hit school that you're ready. And that's an area that we haven't devoted enough time to. The Board of Education with Joel Klein and Deputy Mayor Dennis Walcott have been working tremendously on improving the school system. So there's a lot going on there and a lot of positive things going on for the 5-year-olds and up. But then again, some of the children, if they don't make it through, what are we going to do with, how are we going to help them get their lives back together again and get them back in, connected to either education opportunities or employment opportunities? And again, that's where the commission report came up. It said, let's deal with the disconnected youth. That's a target population. And of course, the working poor, which the Office of Financial Empowerment is one of the first initiatives. But to say that if people are working, and this is a great theme for Mayor Bloomberg, it's been, if people are working, can't we help them out? They shouldn't have to struggle every day. So let's work with those people and see what we can do to make their lives better. If they're doing all the things we ask them to do, they go to work each day. And if we can help them out with something like the Child Care Tax Credit, that's terrific. If we can help them out with these various other programs across city agencies, that's wonderful, because we should help them to move along and not have to live in poverty. The number of people that are actually working living in poverty was such a staggering number that I think people felt that had to be a target group.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Linda.
Another thing that just struck me as Veronica was reviewing all that is thinking yesterday about some others that joined us at the announcement. Members of the City Council who have eagerly reached out and asked, how can we be working with you? What do you need from us? How can we help? Congressman Rangel coming and his lifelong passion on this issue and looking for an opportunity for how he can contribute to the efforts here in New York and through the federal platform that he's working on. The foundations that work in the city who have been great supporters of this and have really asked us. We see the mayor pulling together a conversation that's really uniting people around this issue in a very new way, and we want to be part of that. We want to know where we can play the strongest role. Nonprofit organizations that are now starting their strategic planning around the plan. And I think that's why this creates such a great opportunity and such a daunting challenge in terms of implementation, is really every one of those offers to us, every call that we get, we want to be part of this. How can we help? For us to really find constructive ways to create those places where people can, in the mission of their own organization, make a contribution to this combined cause. And that's the kind of thing that's going to make the dent in poverty, by bringing all those forces together, by leveraging all those other players and activities and the base of operations they have. That's how we can really hold out the promise that we're going to see a dent in these numbers.
Yeah, and it seems to be a hallmark of the Bloomberg administration of this multi-agency, multi-function synergies that one often doesn't see across the boxes of organization charts, and a very results-oriented process as well.
From the beginning of this administration, when I was first appointed commissioner, when we were all new and very eager, and we listened very carefully to what the mayor said. And for commissioners with their own agencies, he just encouraged people to take risks, figure out what needs fixing. That's what we're here for. We're here to make a difference and do that work. And then the other half of that statement was, don't step on each other's toes. When you do your work, make sure you're not doing harm to somebody else, and look for ways that you can together make the government function better for the citizens of New York. And he really, in that sort of spirit of risk-taking and experimentation for the purpose of doing greater good, encouraged people to think about how they could combine forces in non-traditional ways.
And in fact, go ahead, Jonathan.
I was just going to say, I mean, and one of the interesting non-traditional ways is collaborating with the industries. Sometimes the industries that are considered part of the problem. You can have very productive conversations when you're looking to solve problems that people come at from different perspectives, but are all looking to end up in the same place.
An illustration?
Well, we find that with the debt collection industry, for example. Lots of problems in that area, lots of concerns, and yet there are many common interests. And when you bring them to the table, along with the not-for-profits, the banking institutions, et cetera, there really are ways to find those common places to make improvements, and I think that's been the hallmark of
And I would
what we've been encouraged
expect
to do.
that a lot of these actors are really quite surprised that they're invited, and they're surprised to see the possibility of mutual working and synergies and symbiosis, if you will.
We had a funny experience just last week. We were Chancellor Klein, Sean Donovan, who heads our housing agency, Tom Frieden from Health, Veronica and myself, Deputy Mayor Patty Harris, and the mayor were sitting down to just a midpoint review, Deputy Mayor Walcott, to talk about our conditional cash transfer program. And Kevin Cheeky, Deputy Mayor for Intergovernmental Relations, came by and he said, I can't even figure out what the conversation is that's happening at this table. You know, it's all these different parts of city government that you wouldn't traditionally see sitting together planning and working on something. But this whole effort around how each organization, I think that's what the mayor has asked us, how in each of your roles, how can your organization, how can the mission of your organization embrace within it the concrete goal of reducing poverty? And what is it that you bring to the table? What do you have to offer? And there has been very few agencies that legitimately could not find a role that they could play in this effort of reducing poverty.
Yeah, you would think, looking at the agency list, that there's virtually none that in some way or another couldn't be involved.
Well, John Doherty at Sanitation, he's been struggling a little bit trying to think
that's
of what he
true,
could
that's
do. But but he's trying.
I'm
he's,
sure.
He's not going to give up.
I'm sure
Yeah.
there is a way. What's the next step? Well, we've got this big rollout. We've got the announcement. Now you've got to make it work. What do you see your job over the next 2 months?
Well, that's just the first rollout. So each of the other agencies are working on their plans, so we can come up with a few other plans that are going to be announced over the next few months.
I mean, without
around other
releasing anything, can we name some of those
Just
agencies?
between the four of us here.
And those people out there? What can we expect?
We're also at the same time working on creating the tools for evaluating each of these programs with each of the
So that's
agencies.
ongoing throughout,
Right.
and that's the development of the measurement indicators.
That's right.
And you're
that-
not going to tell me what's coming next? Just a little bit? Just possible? It might be? No. Talk about your internal operations. Do you have staff? Do you have offices? Where are you in terms of your ability internally to move the process?
I'm going to be using a lot of the existing staff, both in the Deputy Mayor's office, because she has people that relate to each of the agencies that she supervises. And in addition, I'll be working with each of the commissioners have staff. So I don't necessarily need a large staff of my own, because there's people out there doing this work. So it would be duplicative, and that's one of the things we don't do in the Bloomberg administration.
Okay.
So there are people that have the knowledge base in the agencies, and those are the experts. And my job is to help them get their programs running. It's not to hire a staff to do that. The one area where I will be looking to hire staff is across the measurement and evaluation piece, because that's a component that's not really necessarily visible in city government at this point. There are people in each of the
Except for
agencies
operations, right.
that do it, but there's no existing staff that does that kind of work at this point in time. So that's something that I'll be working with Linda to think about. But
And excuse me, and you're confident in your early thinking that the city has the ability both to develop the measures and actually collect the data and then apply these data to the phenomena out there?
This is a huge task.
I know.
The discussion,
I
the
know.
criticisms around the federal poverty measure have gone on. Dozens of people.
We talked about it last
days
week.
and days and days of discussion. And I think what we have is a unique opportunity to just take a shot at it. We don't have the same burdens that the federal government has, the Census Bureau that has to manage this and think about all the immediate implications in terms of the funding formulas that the poverty measure is hardwired to. We don't have that burden, so we have the opportunity to experiment with this, to create some alternative measures, to look not only at alternative income measures, but to look at other measures of material deprivation and need, and some sort of composite index, maybe a little bit like the United Nations does their international poverty index.
Or
which
Dow
is-
Jones on the
right.
private sector.
And what are some different ways that we can look at this, and both to gauge the progress of the individual initiatives collectively as they advance, and to measure whether or not they are having the impact in the well-being in the households that we're intending.
Jonathan, since you're rolling it out first, what are you up to?
Well, in my head is that countdown clock in the bullpen. You know, we've got a little over 1,100 days, and we have to make the biggest impact that we can, and that's certainly the charge from the mayor and the deputy mayor. And so, what we want to figure out is, I mean, you talk about measurement. It's not only measurement on a large scale, but one of the things we want to take a look at in financial literacy efforts is to try to make sure that we know what actually works, and to build and to actually find the best practices in evaluation models of financial literacy, so that all those institutions looking to invest their resources in helping people can make sure that they're doing so wisely.
What you just said just points to the immensity of the task, because Jonathan's got a piece of this, and one of those pieces, financial literacy, you've got to get the best models and the appropriate measures. You're literally talking about thousands of measures, no?
Well, I think with all of this, for each program will have their own set of measures, and I think it will fail if we adopt thousands of measures.
Right.
I think we really have to identify the most likely handful of measures and then keep an eye on those. And so just in terms of the measurement thing is not to become, if you have too many measures, you don't know what you're looking at, the key ones. And the other thing that I think is going to create our success is that the mayor has clearly empowered the commissioners in this administration to undertake their tasks and to accomplish the work that they are proposing to him that they want to do, and he is asking them to do. And this will continue to remain led by our commissioners, tremendously talented set of individuals, and it's the strength of their leadership and management that will really bring all of these initiatives to the fruition and to achieve the goals that we are hoping that they are setting out to achieve.
We only have 30 seconds. Time flies when you're having fun. 6 months, you come back. What are you folks going to tell me?
We're going to tell you about a few new programs, and we're going to tell you how we're impacting the lives of poor people in New York City in a very positive way.
And we're going to have demonstrable results. We're going to have people better off than they were before the process started.
We know that the first year clearly will be an implementation year.
Right.
You got to get the programs in place and get them off the ground before you can expect to see the outcome that's
results.
Being achieved.
That's sort of the third
first
level.
Year is clearly are you getting those building blocks in place? That's how the progress will be measured.
Okay. But we have to get to level 3 with outcomes before how many days on the clock?
1,103.
I think that's right.
Good luck.
We're counting.
Thank you.
I think you'll succeed. Take care. Thank you very much.